Alright guys, so a common question from beginners is how many days a week should I be lifting weights? How often should I train when I'm new? So the short answer is it depends, but generally speaking, for beginners, those guys who are new to lifting weights, I would say 2 to 3 days a week is how often you want to be training. And there's a number of reasons for this. First, I want to start off with 2 definitions that'll help to kind of frame the answer. The first one is what's called minimum effective dose, and it's really exactly what it sounds like. So within the context of training, it's the smallest amount of work that you can do that's still gonna get you better. The smallest amount of work that you can do that's still gonna elicit a response, an adaptation, and it's gonna move you forward. So get you stronger, more muscle, etc. The second term is maximum recoverable volume. And think of this as like a threshold that you don't want to cross. So this is the amount of work that if you go above it, your body's not going to be able to recover from it. So you do too much work and a few things could happen. One is you could overtrain and start to actually regress. So your performance will start diminishing because your body can't recover. Or 2, you could get injured. You simply just can't recover from it. So for both of these, in a beginner versus an advanced athlete, both of these numbers will be a lot lower, both of these values. So it's pretty common sense. Like as a beginner, you're really new to training, you don't have much of a base, you haven't done anything before, you don't need much work at all to get better compared to an advanced athlete. You've already been training for a while, and there's just a certain amount of work that you have to do. You've already adapted to the training process, you recover quite quickly, you need more work now to actually keep seeing improvements. And on the MRV, or maximum recoverable volume side of things, again, it's the same. The value is going to be a lot higher if you're an advanced athlete. So again, pretty common sense. Like when you're an advanced athlete, your body adapts to the training process, you can recover quicker, you can handle more work before you start overtraining. As a beginner, you haven't adapted yet, you're still new. It doesn't take much work before you're overtraining and you start to regress. You just can't handle as much volume, as much weight. The body and the muscles and the nervous system aren't adapted yet. So to go a bit more depth into this, why exactly can't you recover as quickly when you're a beginner? Just want to go over one concept, and that's muscle protein synthesis. So as a beginner, when you lift weights, you give your body, it's a stress response essentially. So when you lift weights, your body will kick off what's called the mTOR pathway. That leads to muscle protein synthesis, and that leads to building muscle. So to simplify it, you lift something heavy, your body realizes it's going to have to adapt in order to keep lifting heavy things, and it'll trigger muscle protein synthesis. That's just laying down like the building blocks of muscle. It's just building proteins that's going to lead to the muscle getting stronger and bigger over time. So in a beginner versus an advanced athlete, this will last for 2 to 3 days after training. So in a beginner, for 2 to 3 days after you actually lift, you're still synthesizing protein, the muscle's still growing, still recovering. In an advanced athlete, this is more like a day, depending on how advanced, how far down the road you are. So the practical implication of this is for 2 to 3 days after you train as a beginner, you're still recovering. So you want to give your body 2 to 3 days to actually rest, recover, grow before you train again. And that's where the 2 to 3 days, training 2 to 3 days a week comes from. Say you're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're giving yourself 2 days after you lift to actually recover, to grow, and to adapt. So that's why you don't want to be going like 5 days a week, Monday through to Friday, right off the bat. Your body's not going to recover from it. You might even get above that MRV, that maximum recoverable volume, and you're not going to get the most out of it. Beyond that, it's just if you go into it too much too soon, you increase the likelihood of plateauing sooner. If you can start lighter and build up slower, the progress should go for longer before you start to stall. And so that's where 2 to 3 days a week comes from. So to get into a bit more specifics, what should you actually be doing for these 2 to 3 days of the week? Like when you're lifting, what should you be doing? You want to focus on compound lifts and not isolation lifts as a beginner. So compound lifts are just exercises that use multiple joints, lots of big muscle groups. So to give you an example, would be a squat, would be a compound lift, a leg extension would be an isolation lift. So why do you want to focus on this? The reason is Well, there's two reasons. The compound lifts, you're using more muscle mass, so you're growing more muscles at once, which is important as a beginner. Like when you're more advanced, you might have weak muscles that you want to bring up. As a beginner, everything's kind of weak at the start. So you want big exercises that hit all the muscles at once. As much growth as you can get really from one exercise. It's all about the efficiency of the exercise. The second thing is it just carries over to performance better. So whether or not you're an athlete, if you're using your body as a unit, you're just going to have a greater strength response. Like no one ever really got fast just from doing leg extensions, but a big squat does actually translate over to athletic performance, like vertical jump, sprinting speed, same thing with deadlift. So that's why you want to focus on compound exercises. It also kind of plays into the two terms that we've talked about before. So a lot of people say, well, why don't I just do body part splits? And a lot of beginners commonly do. So they'll do like chest, back, shoulders, arms, maybe one day for legs. The problem for this is think back to the minimum effective dose and think back to MRV. So if you're doing body part splits, how many days a week are you hitting the muscle and how many days a week are you actually growing? The answer is just one day a week. And then to counter that, some people might say, well, I'm doing more work for the muscle each time I train. So when I do chest, I've got 5 different exercises going. I'm getting a big response out of it. Think back to the minimum effective dose. There's a high likelihood by the time you've done 2 of those 5 exercises you do on chest day, you've already gotten everything that you're going to get out of it. So you'd be better off to do less volume, to hit the full body and do it 3 days a week, because then you're giving yourself 3 days a week where you can actually trigger a response and you can grow. So I would say, especially for beginners, this is going to be the better way to go. Like when you're more advanced, again, you can recover a bit better, but you also need more work, that minimum effective dose. So you need more work. Maybe then you do need to start splitting up the training and doing more work for each muscle. But as a beginner, I would definitely focus on compound lifts 2 to 3 days a week, basic exercises, basic mass. That's really the crux of it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. There'll be more on it. Stay tuned for more videos on